shared during the meeting. So with that, I will call the regularly scheduled Community Development Committee of the Metropolitan Council meeting to order for November 1st, 2020. The first item is our agenda, and members can see the posted agenda. And if there are no objections or changes, I will consider the agenda approved. Any changes, committee members? Changes? Hearing none, we have an agenda. One moment there. Sorry, too many tabs open. The next item on the agenda is our minutes from the October 19th regular Community Development Committee meeting. And is there a motion to approve?
Vento moves approval of the agenda.
This is the minutes.
I'm sorry, minutes.
Thank you. Is there
Wolf seconds.
Thank you, council members. Any discussion on the motion? Discussion. Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Yes, Chair Lilligren. I did receive an advance notice that Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen and Councilmember Lee will not be in attendance today. So I will start with Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings. She was having technical issues, so I'm going to move on to Johnson. I see you, Judy. I believe you're muted. Lilligren.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Musse. Vento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. That item carries, and I apologize for not establishing a roll call, so we'll use that first vote to establish the quorum. And thanks, Director Barajas. Councilmember Johnson is having audio issues. There's Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Johnson, did you want to vote on the last item? Your name was called during, okay, so that's a thumbs up, so that's an aye. And Councilmember Cummings, are you with us? Councilmember Cummings? Councilmember.
I'm having audio issues.
Okay.
I got caught, kicked out of the meeting. So anyway, I vote aye.
Okay, vote aye, and she is present as well. So that item is adopted. And here we go to the consent agenda. We have one item on the consent agenda today. It's item 2020-297, Cochran Tavera Comprehensive Plan Amendment. And I would seek a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Vento moves approval of the consent agenda.
Wolf seconds.
Thank you, council members. Discussion on that motion? Hearing none. Michelle, please call the roll on the motion.
Yes, Chair Lilligren. Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. The consent agenda is adopted, and we'll move on to our non-consent items. The first being 2020-298. It's a same week item, the 2020 Livable Communities Demonstration Account funding recommendations. And both Hannah Gary from Met Council staff is present, and Mayor Joe Emerson to present. So welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. I am Hannah Gary, a senior planner with the Livable Communities Act, and I'm here to present the 2020 Livable Communities Act, Livable Communities Demonstration Account grant funding recommendations. And I would also like to welcome Mayor Joe Emerson, who is the chair of the Livable Communities Advisory Committee, and she will be co-presenting with me this afternoon. Next slide, please. So the funding recommendation before, and it looks like maybe this is an older version of the PowerPoint. I apologize. We had a change in funding recommendation Friday, October 30th. The funding recommendation before you today is to award $8.5 million to 7 projects and to authorize its community development director to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the council. Next slide, please. Projects funded through the LCDA program are demonstrations of projects that meet the goals set by the council, which are connecting development to transit, intensifying land uses, connecting housing and employment, providing a mix of housing affordability, connecting communities, and attracting investment. Next slide, please. Applications go through a 2-step review process. The first is with an internal review committee based on criteria approved by the council. 14 of the 15 applications received in July met the minimum score requirement this round and moved to step 2 review. Step 2 is a review with an external review committee, the Livable Communities Advisory Committee, or the LCAC. The LCAC is made up of 15 members from different areas of expertise relating to community development. The committee assesses applications based on innovation and demonstration, catalytic value, and readiness. Next slide, please. The fund distribution plan, which outlines funding availability and the program schedule for the year, was adopted in February, followed by a notice of funding availability that was distributed in March. Optional design workshops convene top designers and architects to review project proposals with applicants and offer feedback to encourage best design practices and support livable community development. Due to the pandemic, the design workshops were conducted virtually this year. Applicants had the opportunity to get feedback from the design team to incorporate into their projects. Full LCDA applications were due on July 31st, and we received 15 applications. And again, 14 of those 15 applications advanced from step 1 to step 2 for review by the Livable Communities Advisory Committee. One application did not have a high enough score from the step 1 review to advance to the next round of review. The funding recommendation before you today will be presented to the full council on November 4th for approval. Next slide, please. In 2020, the council made $9 million available for LCDA development and pre-development programs. $500,000 of that $9 million was allocated to LCDA pre-development funds, with $250,000 available in each round. 4 applications came in through the spring pre-development round, with awards totaling $300,000. $50,000 was remaining in the LCDA TOD pre-development account and was transferred into the LCDA pre-development account, to fully fund 2 projects and partially fund another 2 projects. And with the 15 applications that came into the development program this year, the total requests were over $17 million. According to council guidelines, no more than 40% of available funds may be awarded to projects located in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and the remaining 60% of funds are made available for projects outside of those 2 cities. Next slide, please.
This is the funding recommendation showing all projects eligible for funding. As Hannah said, from council guidelines, no more than 40% of the available funds may be allocated to projects in Minneapolis and St. Paul. With $8.5 million available, that leaves $3.5 million to Minneapolis and St. Paul. The committee is recommending fully funding the highest scoring projects and partially funding the Rise on 7 project in St. Louis Park. The Luther Seminary Development Project in St. Paul was recommended for funding, but the staff was informed on October 30th that this project was delayed, and the team requested the project be removed from the funding recommendation. This made an additional $295,000 available to allocate. Based on the LCAC conversation and scores, staff is recommending this additional funding be awarded to Rise on 7 in St. Louis Park. The table before you shows the applications that were advanced up to be considered for scoring. The Luther Seminary project is not shown as they have removed their application from funding consideration. Next slide, please.
So we will now give a brief overview of the projects that are being recommended for funding today. The first project being recommended for funding is from the City of Minneapolis to support the expansion of Juxtaposition Arts Campus in North Minneapolis. Juxtaposition Arts provides employment and career training in arts and creative careers for young people. The current buildings require demolition, and the new campus will allow for expansion of their programming. Through the community engagement process, the team saw the value of a temporary skatable plaza on the existing corner. This changed the project to keep the plaza and expand around it. The team is requesting funding for site acquisition, preparation, placemaking, stormwater management, renewable energy, and design and engineering fees. The committee is recommending full funding at $1.1 million. Next slide, please.
This is Cornerstone Village in Brooklyn Park. This is a mixed income housing project bringing 130 units to Brooklyn Park. Affordable units are set aside for senior adults age 55 and up living with intellectual and development disabilities. The affordable units are distributed throughout the development. In addition to the housing development, the project will include a publicly accessible healing garden. The project is requesting funds for site acquisition, holding costs, public space landscaping, placemaking, public infrastructure, and site preparation. The committee is recommending fully funding the project at $2 million. Next slide, please.
Stryker Senior Housing will bring 57 units of affordable senior housing to a disinvested mixed commercial and residential area of St. Paul. The project includes 43 units of housing below 30% of area median income, with 5 units dedicated to veterans coming out of homelessness. The project includes a public art component on the corner of the site. The project team is requesting funding for stormwater management and site preparation. The committee is recommending full funding at $500,000. Next slide, please.
Gardens at Bryn Mawr. This project is part of a larger multi-phase development project, but the committee was only assessing the affordable senior housing component. This phase of the project will bring 100 units of affordable senior housing from below 30% AMI to 50% AMI. The project will also bring a stormwater management system to the site and will be done in partnership with the public school system. There will be shared educational components with the management system. The site will also better connect to the existing park trail system. The team is asking for funding for stormwater management, public infrastructure, and site preparation. We have recommended the full funding at $500,000. Next slide, please.
This is an infill project bringing to Hopkins 50 units of affordable housing for individuals living with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families. 33 of the units are affordable below 30% of area median income, and the remaining units are affordable at 31 to 50% of area median income. The project is located in downtown Hopkins with strong connections to transit and services downtown. The site design includes green space on this compact infill site. The award will support site acquisition, stormwater management, and site preparation. The committee is recommending fully funding the project at $1.5 million. Next slide, please.
Texatonka St. Louis Park EDA. Coming out of a small area planning engagement effort, this project will bring a diversity of housing types to a currently underutilized site. 20% of the units will be affordable and will be evenly distributed throughout the development. The project increases density near a declining shopping center and makes use of local transit connections. The project team is requesting funding for stormwater management, placemaking, renewable energy, and public infrastructure extensions. The committee has recommended full funding of this project at $465,000. Next slide.
The final project being recommended for funding today will bring 120 units of housing to St. Louis Park. 101 of those units will be affordable below 30% of area median income and at 51% of area median income. 12 of the units will be reserved for high priority homeless individuals and persons with disabilities. The ground floor of the development will house an early childhood center open to the general public. Affordable slots will be reserved for families living in the new development. The project team is requesting funding for site acquisition, holding costs, and stormwater management. The original funding request for this project was just over $1.6 million. Due to limited funds, the committee is recommending funding this project at $1,430,000. Next slide, please. And once again, the funding recommendation before you today is to award $8.5 million to 7 projects, not 8 projects, and to authorize its community development director to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the council. Thank you for your time, and we can take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Gary, and Mayor Emerson. Thanks to you and to all the members of the LCAC for your work and service to the region. Committee members, questions or discussion on the report or the recommendation?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
Thank you,
Councilmember
Mr.
Cummings.
Chair. I'm really pleased to see in these developments that there are units set aside for homeless individuals. And is that newer, or have we historically seen applications that included units for those experiencing homelessness, or are we seeing more of that? It certainly is critically important, and just curious. I'm really pleased to see that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Councilmember Cummings. This is only my second full round going through LCDA, but in looking past in previous years, I believe that we do have more units set aside for high priority homeless this year than we have had in previous years.
I would agree with that, even though this is only my second year to also. I would agree that we did see more this year.
Thank you.
Councilmember, further questions or discussion on the report? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you,
And
Mr.
then
Chair.
Councilmember Chan.
Thank you. I really appreciate all the hard work on this. And I was just actually looking in the attached staff report that went along with the presentation to kind of get an understanding too, just around the region where the development projects were cited, right? And I do see that there were some on the east side of the metro, the south side in St. Paul, but they just didn't meet that criteria. So I think there was the Lutheran Seminary and maybe one other. I don't have the presentation in front of me. Just seems a little heavy weighted to the Metro Core and West, and I suppose that just happens from time to time. But I'm just curious. I guess it is just based on scoring, and if there are sites from around the region and they just don't make the score, I guess we kind of just have to deal with what we have to deal with. Is that how it goes? Just a question kind of on geographic disbursement.
I'm happy to answer that as a suburban mayor. Yes, I'd like to see more suburban communities take part in this, but yes, we have to have some litmus test, and scoring is going to be it. I mean, otherwise we'll never get through this and approve if we don't have a system in place. Could it be tweaked possibly down the road? We'll want to do something, but yeah, I think it's a valid concern, but I think this is the best system we have right now to do this. So this is what the committee works on. Hannah, if you've got anything you want to add, please.
Yeah, Councilmember Johnson, is definitely something that we consider a lot as a team in LCA, and are talking a lot about how we can make sure that we have as much balance as possible geographically, and it's something that we're working on next year. And I think part of that will also be us maybe doing more active outreach as a team as well, and seeing how we can reach out and talk to communities who maybe haven't applied before or who have applied and not gotten funded, and see how we can be most supported to be able to have more geographic representation in the program.
Councilmember Johnson, if you're talking, you're mute.
And I just wanted to say I appreciate that, because in the housing work group, you know, we're always trying to figure out how do we really get those communities to be able to compete and want to, you know, be part of the program and not be frustrated by, you know, not meeting the bar that is set. So I just had to ask the question, and thanks for that response. I do appreciate it.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councilmember Chan?
Thank you. I know when we reviewed the policy plan back in February, there was a listing of key policy changes from 2019. I don't recall in that meeting talking about the decision to have 40% of the dollars allocated as a maximum for Minneapolis. Sorry about the background noise. Does somebody provide some background on how that decision was made and the reasons?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Chambliss. If Lisa Barajas is on the line, she may be able to provide more insight into the background of how that 40-60 split was allocated. That 40-60 split has been in the fund distribution plan at least since 2018, but I am not sure the genesis of that. So maybe Lisa, if you could offer a little bit of insight there.
Director Barajas.
Thank you, Chair Lilligren, council members. I'm Lisa Barajas, Community Development Director. There is one section of statute where the 40-60 split is required for one of the funding programs, and the council has chosen to apply that split across the other funding programs as well, except for LHIA. So it's something that's been practiced for quite some time. I know Councilmember Wolf probably has some familiarity with that too and can add to it, but that's been the practice for quite some time.
Mr. Chair, this is Councilmember Wolf.
Councilmember Wolf.
Yeah, I would agree with what Director Barajas said. It's been policy because if you don't have a limit, Minneapolis and St. Paul get all the money. And they have historically, since we started having the TOD program, done very, very well in that program, sometimes getting 80% of the money in the funding round. So in order to keep it a regional program, that we've supported having a breakdown like that of how the funds are distributed. And if there aren't enough applications, which sometimes happens when there's a downturn in the development world, then we will allow Minneapolis and St. Paul to go over that if they're not displacing the suburban community in the process. But if we didn't have that limit, it would not be a regional program. Minneapolis and St. Paul would get nearly all the money.
Okay, so I take it they were getting, that was because historically Minneapolis and St. Paul actually did get quite a bit of the money. It must have happened so that was changed.
Director Barajas, did you want to respond? Councilmember Wolf, you look like you were going
to. As far as I know, it's always been that way. It's long before
the statutory language, yeah, has always, I believe, is that correct, Director Barajas? That 40% cap on Minneapolis, St. Paul?
Mr. Chair, council members, to my knowledge, I concur with Councilmember Wolf. I don't know that it's ever been different, to be honest.
Okay, I just wanted to know, I looked at the statute and didn't see it in there specific to Minneapolis and St. Paul and the others, but I totally understand that it's important to make sure that, as a region, we have some sort of criteria. So I appreciate that background.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussions or questions on the report or the recommendation? Further discussion? Seeing none, the staff recommends and the LCAC recommend that the Metropolitan Council award 7 livability communities demonstration account grants as shown in Table 1, totaling $8.5 million, and authorize the Community Development Director to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the Council. Is there a motion to approve the recommendation?
Cummings moves approval.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion? Discussion. Hearing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Yes, Chair Lilligren. Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Bento,
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, that motion carries. And we'll move on to our next business item, which is 2020-299. It's a joint committee's item, the 2040 Comprehensive Plan and Comprehensive Sewer Plan for the City of Little Canada. And Patrick Boylan is here to present. Mr. Boylan, welcome.
Thank you, Chair Lilligren. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Excellent, thank you. Well, I'm Patrick. I'm the second representative for Districts 13, 14, 15, and 16, and the Local Planning Assistance Group and Community Development. I'd like the committee to know that Ms. Corinne Wendell, Little Canada's Community Development Director, and Mr. Chris Heineman, the City Administrator, and Mr. Bill Weber, Planning Consultant with Weber Consulting, are on the WebEx call today. And just a quick personal thank you to Corinne. As some of you recall, she used to be a sector rep in my work unit, Local Planning Assistance. And I wanted to thank her for, coming along and helping me out and making me, making this a good review. It's a little daunting to present a project by one of your former colleagues. I hope I do well. So with that, next slide, please. The regional, pardon me. This map reflects Region 1 or Figure 1 of the staff report and identifies the location of all regional components within the City of Little Canada. There's one lift station and 2 meters and several interceptors as part of the regional wastewater system. And there's an impressive variety of regional arterial roadways, including 35E, which is north-south through the community, Interstate 694, which is in the northern part of the community, and then Highway 36 through the southern portion. Also present is the regional trail search corridors, the St. Anthony Railroad Spur, and the Trout Brook Extension. Next slide, please. Figure 2 from the staff report identifies the city as suburban community designation, which is as part of Thrive MSP 2040. Little Canada is located in central Ramsey County and surrounded by the communities of Venice Heights, Maplewood, Roseville, and Shoreview. Next slide, please. Table 1, also in your staff report, shows that between 2020 and 2040, the city proposed forecasts indicate the city will grow by 200 people, representing 250 households. They'll have an increase of 1,000 jobs in the city in the same time frame. The city requests, and the council staff have agreed during the review process, to a forecast revision in the plan, which is outlined, or which is shown as outline numbers to the right, or the 3 columns on the right side of the table. The forecast revision results are an adjustment of the affordable housing need number to the city to 72 units between 2021 and 2030. Next slide, please. Table 2 from the slide from the staff report illustrates the planned residential density in the suburban areas of the city. The overall density guided for residential land is expected between 9.5 and 26.5 units per acre. Communities under Thrive with a suburban designation are expected to plan for forecasted population and household growth at an average minimum density of 5 units per acre for new development and redevelopment. Little Canada's plan is consistent with this policy. Next slide, please. The city's existing land use map refers to figure 3 in the staff report. The city is approximately 4.5 square miles, and the existing land use is 43% residential, a little over 8% for commercial, and 6% industrial, and major highway right-of-way is 9% of the land area of the city. The key industrial areas of the city is along the rail corridor located west of Interstate 35E and south of Interstate 694. Significant commercial areas along State Highway 36 and along Little Canada Road. Key transportation corridors in the city include the railroad corridors, interstate freeways, state and Ramsey County highways, and there's significant industrial and commercial lands that exist in these corridors. Next slide, please. The city's planned land use map refers to figure 4 in the staff report. Like many communities that are redeveloping, Little Canada has land use categories that encourage and permit a mix of uses. The future land use here is a thoughtful approach to the redevelopment market trends in housing, commercial trends, and local industrial uses for this part of the region. Next slide, please. The proposed findings are the plan conforms to Metropolitan System plans, consistent with council policies, and is compatible with the plans of adjacent local governmental units and affected jurisdictions. Next slide, please. On Tuesday, November 10th, the Environmental Services Committee will hear a staff report on the sanitary sewer plan. There will be on to the Metropolitan Council agenda for the November 18th meeting. And I just want to remind the committee that Corinne Wendell and Chris Heineman and Bill Weber are also present on this call. The proposed action, next slide, please. Thank you. It is to authorize the City of Little Canada to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect, to revise the city's forecast upward as shown in Table 1 of the attached record, to revise the affordable housing need allocation to 72 units. Next slide, please. And to advise the city to provide the council the date the watershed approved the local water management plan and the date the city adopted the final local water management plan, and provide this council with a copy of the final adopted local water management plan that will be included in the final plan document the city adopts. B, to revise the forecast in the plan prior to final plan adoption as described in the forecast section of the review record. And C, to implement the advisory comments in the review record for water supply. Next slide, please. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Boylan, for your report and for your work on this, and thanks to our friends from Little Canada for visiting today. And committee members, any questions or discussion on Mr. Boylan's report?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, I can't tell who that is, but please.
It's Councilmember Cummings. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Cummings.
Just a question of curiosity. I'm wondering if somebody can tell us the history of the name Little Canada.
Councilmember Cummings and Mr. Chair, I have read a couple things about that, but I'm not really sure. I know City Administrator Heineman's on the call, and also Corinne Wendell or perhaps Bill Weber could weigh in on that.
Yeah, please. Any of our guests from Little Canada?
I can help on that. This is Bill Weber, planning consultant.
Sure.
Little Canada, like Venice Sites and several neighboring communities, was founded by French immigrants who came in basically down the Highway 8 corridor after crossing the St. Croix River and settled in this vicinity. And Mr. Gervais, or Jarvis as it's locally pronounced, was an early settler, and that's the genesis of the name. They came from Canada. That's why it's called Little Canada. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. Thank you, Councilmember. Further questions on the report? Further questions? Hearing none, Councilmember Bento, did you want to move approval of this item?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd love to move approval. So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lindstrom.
Thank you. You had a couple of them. Any discussion on the motion? Discussion.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to,
yeah.
Thank you. I just want to do a shout out to both, to all three of our folks that are here from Little Canada today, Corinne, Chris, and Bill. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting Bill, but I have I worked with Corinne when she was at the council, and she was a sector rep that I did a lot of work with on the cities that I get to represent, and also met Chris last winter. And it's a delightful community. It's really fun one. I mean, it's another one of those, and you've heard me say it a million times, take the exit off the freeway and go explore, because it's just amazing. So Little Canada's a great community, and it's actually one that I've checked out for potential real estate purchases, along with a few others. So thank you to the team.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any further discussion on the motion? Discussion. Hearing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Yes, Chair Lilligren. Chambliss? Chambliss? Cummings?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Lilligren?
Aye.
Lindstrom?
Aye.
Vento?
Aye.
Wolf? Thank you.
Thank you. That item is adopted. And thank you, Mr. Moreland. We will move on to our next business item, which is 2020-300. Joint Committee's item. It's the 2040 Comprehensive Plan, Comprehensive Sewer Plan of the City of East Bethel. And Mr. Wycheck is here to present. Welcome.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thanks, Chair Lilligren. I appreciate it. As the chair said, my name is Eric Wycheck. I'm the sector representative for districts 9, 2, and 10 in the local planning assistance group in community development. And I know that I did invite Stephanie Hansen, the community development director, to this meeting today, but I don't think she's in the audience. Sometimes it's hard to tell when you look at the participants, but I don't think she's here. But I wanted to especially thank Stephanie Hansen and also the city administrator, Jack Davis, for all of their hard work on this plan. So before you here today is the 2040 Comprehensive Plan for the City of East Bethel. Next slide, please. This map reflects figure 1 of the staff report and identifies the location of regional system components within the City of East Bethel. You have the MCES treatment plant in the southwestern corner of the city. You have a single interceptor which runs north-south along Trunk Highway 65. And you have the North Anoka County Regional Trail Search Corridor, which bisects the city. And then you have the East Anoka County Regional Trail, which is in the northeast section of the city. And the major transportation corridor here is the Trunk Highway 65, which runs north-south here. Next slide, please. Figure 2 of the staff report identifies the city as a rural center and diversified rural community designations consistent with Thrive MSP 2040. East Bethel is located along the northern border of Anoka County. It is surrounded by the communities of Linwood Township, Columbus, Ham Lake, Andover, Oak Grove, St. Francis, and Bethel. Next slide, please. Figure 3 from the staff report shows the revised community designation for the city, which changes the southeast portion of the city from rural center to diversified rural. During the development of the 2040 plan, pretty early on, really, the city initiated discussion with council staff regarding a change to the community designation for that southeast portion of the city. That area was due to be part of the rural center, future Seward area. But due to constraints within the southeast portion of the city, constraints related to ground conditions and limited development potential in the near term, we've worked with the city to change that designation. Council staff find that the city's request to change its community designation to be reasonable, and council staff support the city's request for a change from rural center to diversified rural in that southeast portion of the city. Next slide, please. Table 1, also in your staff report, shows that between 2020 and 2040, the council forecasts that the city will grow by 6,000 people, representing 2,700 households. There will be an increase of 500 jobs in the city in the same time frame. Next slide, please. Table 2 from the staff report shown here illustrates the planned residential density in the rural center portion of the city. And the overall density for guided residential land is expected to be between 3.2 and 7.2 units per acre. Communities with a rural center designation under Thrive are expected to plan for forecasted population and household growth at overall average minimum densities of 3 units per acre for new development and redevelopment. And communities with a diversified rural designation under Thrive are expected to plan for growth not to exceed forecasts in patterns that do not exceed 4 units per 40 acres for new development and redevelopment. And East Bethel's plan is consistent with both of the community designation policies. Next slide, please. The city's existing 2030 plan land use map refers to figure 4 in the staff report. The existing land uses in East Bethel are predominantly undeveloped land at 47%, residential land at 18%, agricultural land at 11%, and the majority of the commercial and industrial and institutional uses are located along Trunk Highway 65. Approximately 13% of the city consists of parks and open space. Next slide, please. The city's future planned land use map refers to figure 5 in the staff report. Figure 5 shows the future residential land use categories within the rural center portion of the city to include low density residential, medium density residential, high density residential, and mixed use. I should mention too that there is an error within the land use section that I would like corrected. There is a future growth area land use within the rural center community designation area along Trunk Highway 65. And I've erroneously referred to that as within the diversified rural community designation when it is in fact within the rural center community designation. And the future growth area limits densities at 1 per 10 acres outside of the MUSA. So it's non-sewer development, and the city's chosen to keep that at low densities until services can be provided. The plan also includes land use for rural residential existing lots at an average of 1 unit per 10 acres in the unsewered portions of the city. Next slide, please. Staff find that the plan conforms to metropolitan system plans, is consistent with council policies with the proposed change to community designation, and is compatible with the plans of adjacent local governmental units and affected jurisdictions. Next slide, please. On Tuesday, November 10th, the Environmental Services staff will present to the Environment Committee. This item will be on the Metropolitan Council agenda at the November 18th meeting. And in terms of the proposed action, council staff recommend that the council authorize the city of East Bethel to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect, revise the community designation for the southeastern portion of the city to diversified rural from rural center, as shown in figure 3, and advise the city to report the dates of adoption of the local water management plan and a copy of the final local water management plan if it differs from the draft version to be contained in the city's August 26, 2019 formal plan submission. And council staff advise the city to implement the advisory comments in the review record for transportation, wastewater, water resources, land use, and water supply. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wycheck. Any questions on that report? Any questions? And council members, I can't see you all right now, so if you just want to speak up. Okay, hearing no questions, Mr. Wycheck recommends a series of actions approving the 2040 comprehensive plan for the city of East Bethel. Is there a motion to approve?
Chambliss makes a motion to approve.
Thank you, Councilmember Chambliss. Is there a second?
Wolf seconds.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Hearing none, Michelle, please call the roll on the motion.
Yes, Chair Lilligren. Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Lilligren,
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Bento,
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. That item is adopted. And we'll move on to our next business item on the agenda, which is 2020-301. The Joint Committee's item. It's the 2040 Comprehensive Plan and Comprehensive Sewer Plan of the City of Blaine. And again, it's Eric Wychik that'll present. Thank you, Mr. Wychik.
Thank you, Chair Lilligren. I won't reintroduce myself, but I wanted to let the committee know that I did invite Eric Thorvig, the City of Blaine's Community Development Director, to this meeting, and I believe I can see him in the audience, which is great. I wanted to just thank the city. They worked really hard on this plan, and we've had a few different versions that we've been working with them on, to get it to where it is now. So I appreciate the city's patience and their hard work on this plan. Next slide, please. This map reflects figure 1 of the staff report and identifies the location of regional system components within the city of Blaine. We have 4 interceptors and several meters within our wastewater system. The part of the Bunker Hills Regional Park is within the northwest corner of the city. The city's plan reflects the I-35 West, US Highway 10, Trunk Highway 65, and County State 8 Highway 14, which are metropolitan highways within the city's boundaries. The plan also includes the East Anoka County Regional Trail, which runs east and north, and the East Anoka County, Rice Creek North, Central Anoka and Bunker Hills Chain of Lakes Regional Trails, and the East Anoka County Extension Regional Trail Search Corridor. The plan also includes references to the Anoka-Blaine Airport Comprehensive Plan and describes how the city works with the Metropolitan Airports Commission on airport issues and compatible land use. Next slide, please. Figure 2 from the staff report identifies the city as Suburban Edge, community designation which is consistent with Thrive MSP 2040. The City of Blaine is located in southern Anoka County. It is surrounded by the communities of Ham Lake, Lino Lakes, Circle Pines, Lexington, Shoreview, Mounds View, Spring Lake Park, Fridley, Coon Rapids, and Andover. Next slide, please. Table 1, also in your staff report, shows that between 2020 and 2040, the council forecasts that the city will grow by 21,000 people, representing 8,200 households. There will be an increase of 5,200 jobs in the city in the same time frame. Table 2 in your staff report identifies some revised sewer service forecasts. The Comprehensive Sanitary Sewer Plan states that the entire community is sewer serviced with the exception of small areas that are outside the MUSA. And the revised sewer service forecasts are shown in bold. Next slide, please. Table 3 from the staff report shown here illustrates the planned residential density in the suburban edge areas of the city. The overall density for guided residential land is expected to be between 3.2 and 7.4 units per acre. Communities with the suburban edge designation under Thrive are expected to plan for forecasted growth and household growth at overall minimum densities of 3 to 5 units per acre for new development and redevelopment. Blaine's plan is consistent with this policy. Next slide, please. The city's existing land use map refers to figure 3 in the staff report, which shows the 2016 generalized land use for the city of Blaine. The existing land uses in Blaine are predominantly residential at 37%, agricultural and undeveloped at 31%, and a majority of the commercial, industrial, and institutional uses are located along the Minnesota Highway 65 corridor or Central Avenue, and approximately 9% of the city consists of parks and open space. And next slide, please. City's future land use map refers to figure 4 in the staff report. The future residential land use categories include low density residential, low medium density residential, medium density residential, medium high density residential, high density residential, high density residential commercial, high density residential industrial, and high density residential commercial industrial. A lot of these land uses have not changed between the 2030 and 2040 plans. But all of the 3 mixed use land use categories carry a residential expected share of 50%. Within the unsewered portions of the city, primarily the northwest portion of the city and the North Oaks East and West neighborhoods, the plan guides land at low densities with the rural residential land use of 1 unit per 10 acres to allow for future expansion of urban services to these areas. Next slide, please. Staff finds that the plan conforms to metropolitan system plans, is consistent with council policies with proposed sewer service forecast revision, and is compatible with the plans of adjacent local governmental units and affected jurisdictions. Next slide, please. On Tuesday, November 10th, the Environmental Services staff will present to the Environment Committee. This item will be on the Metropolitan Council agenda at the November 18th meeting. I just wanted to again thank Eric Thorvig for being here and all of the city's hard work on this plan. Council staff recommends the following actions: to authorize the City of Blaine to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect, to revise the city's sewer service forecasts upward as shown in Table 2 of the attached review record, and advise the city to implement the advisory comments in the review record for wastewater, land use, water supply, and historic preservation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wycheck, for the report and for your work on that. And Mr. Thorvig, thanks for your work and your partnership, and thanks for being here today. Committee members, any discussion on that report or questions for Mr. Wycheck?
Mr. Chair, I don't know if you can see me, but
I cannot.
comment.
So I'm
Okay.
Please, Councilmember Lindstrom.
Hello. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not really a question, but I just wanted to call out a couple of things. Number one, they've got the regional trail, they've got Bunker Hills, portion of that, the airport, TPC golf course, the National Sports Center, the headquarters of Aveda. This is a city that has a lot going on, and I wanted to especially call out the population increase. I think Blaine is right up there at #1 or near #1 for population growth, certainly in our region, if not for the entire state. 67,000 to 87,000 and 6,000 or so jobs coming to Blaine. And there's going to be a need for a lot of infrastructure improvements, and I'm thinking Highway 65 is a mess right now. If you try to take 65, some portions of Blaine are just fairly horrific to get through, and safety issues and whatnot. So I suspect that issue will be an issue before the Met Council for a while, Highway 65. But it's a great community, and it's a wonderful community, and I'm pleased to represent it. And when the time is right to make a motion, I will make that motion.
Yeah, Councilmember Lindstrom, why don't you go ahead and make the motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second by Chambliss, and I also wanted to mention that there currently is a study of 65 and 47. So I agree.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember. Any discussion on the motion? Further discussion? Hearing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Yes, Chair Lilligren. Chambliss?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Lilligren?
Aye.
Lindstrom,
Aye.
Vento,
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. That item is adopted. And we'll move on to our next item, 2020-302. Another joint committees item. It's the City of Long Lakes 2040 Comprehensive Plan and Comprehensive Sewer Plan. And Jake Riley is here to present. Welcome, Mr. Riley.
Thank you, Chair Lilligren. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I can't see the presentation screen, so hopefully this will work out okay.
Okay.
See if I can find the, yeah, I don't. All right, we'll give it a shot.
Yep. Mr. Riley, we're not seeing the presentation screen either, or at least
okay.
I'm not. But I do have a little lag.
Excuse me, Chair. I did not get a PowerPoint for Long Lake.
Ah.
Am I allowed to share my screen then?
I believe you may. Yes. Go
All
for
right.
it.
Give her.
See if I can make it work.
There you go, Jake. Good job.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
And then I just got to make it present. Can everybody see it okay?
Michelle, can you see it? I can't see it yet. I have a lag on my
Yes,
web.
we can see the presentation. We can see the side ribbon with all the slides. So you may just want to change the view to normal.
All right.
Cool.
I'm just going to do it this way.
You could try full screen too, maybe.
Hang on just a second. I'm going to mute myself.
Mr. Riley, are you there?
And bear with me just 1 second. I needed to turn off
okay.
one of my monitors so that I could get the right screen to show up. Thank
Sounds
you.
good. Yep.
Are you able to see the Long Lake?
Yes, that looks good, Jake.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Okay.
Thank you.
This is the City of Long Lake's 2040 Comprehensive Plan. And unfortunately, the City of Long Lake staff and consultants were not able to join us today, but I want to thank them very much for their effort on the plan and getting us in front of you today. We have here in front of you is the regional systems map for the City of Long Lake, which is figure 1 in your staff report. The regional systems in Long Lake, which is located in central Hennepin County and is surrounded entirely by the City of Orono, are the Loose Line State Trail, which runs along the southern boundary of the City of Long Lake, Highway 12, which runs through the City of Long Lake, and the meters and lift stations of the regional wastewater treatment system. The community designation for the City of Long Lake is suburban. Suburban communities are expected to plan for residential minimum densities of at least 5 units per acre. Forecasted growth in the City of Long Lake anticipates an additional 110 households between now and 2040, an additional 180 people, and approximately 90 new jobs in the time frame. Planned residential densities for the city of Long Lake. So the city of Long Lake is predominantly residential in nature. That's 49% of the city. The commercial, which is 8%, and industrial areas, also about 8%, are located mostly around Highway 12. And the remainder of the city is parks and open space to some extent. They have developed a new downtown village mixed use category in order to achieve higher densities going forward to 2040, which has them having an overall average density of between 12.5 and 42.2 units per acre between now and the 2040 planning horizon, which exceeds the minimum expected density for suburban communities. Here's the existing land use map using Metropolitan Council data from 2016. Again, here you can see the land uses in Long Lake are predominantly single family with some industrial and commercial around the highway. And again, it's surrounded by the city of Orono. It's also completely sewered and is considered to be fully developed. Here's the 2040 planned land use, which I believe is figure 3 in your staff report. And here you can see the new downtown village mixed use area, which is around the highway and adjacent to Long Lake. Come on, plan. There we go. So the proposed findings here today are that the City of Long Lake's plan conforms to metropolitan system plans, is consistent with council policies, and compatible with the plans of adjacent local governmental units and affected jurisdictions. This item will go before the Environment Committee on Tuesday, November 10th, and the Metropolitan Council on Wednesday, November 18th. The proposed action before you today is to authorize the City of Long Lake to place its 2040 comprehensive plan into effect and to advise the city to implement the advisory comments in the review record for roadways, wastewater, surface water, water supply, and housing. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions. And I'm sorry if I missed any factoids, but I lost my notes when I shared the screen. So I hope any questions, I'll find them and get them answered for you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Riley.
And I'll stop sharing right now so I can maybe sort out for the next presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions on that report, committee members? Questions? And again, I can't see you right off, so if you have a question, please just speak up. Hearing no questions, is there a motion to approve?
Johnson moves.
Thank you, Councilmember. A second?
Coming seconds.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further discussion or discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Hearing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Yes, Chair Lilligren. Chambliss?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Lilligren?
Aye.
Lindstrom?
Aye.
Bento?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks. And Councilmember Chambliss did just pop up again on my screen. Councilmember Chambliss, did you want to vote on this?
Aye.
Thank you. That is adopted. Thank you. And we will move on to item 2020-303. It's a City of Stillwater Planning Case 2020-21 Comprehensive Plan Amendment. And it's you again, Mr. Riley.
Thank you, Chair Lilligren. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right. I am going to get rid of my screen because I see that we have it in front of us. And if you bear with me one sec, I'll get started. Thanks, Greg, for putting that up there.
Thank you.
All right, so thank you, Chair Lilligren and committee members. Today, I'll also be presenting the Stillwater Planning Case 2020-21 Comprehensive Plan Amendment, which is in District 12. Next slide, please. As shown in Figure 1 of your staff report, Thrive MSP 2040 gives the city of Stillwater a community designation of suburban. The area affected by the amendment is shown in red, located outside of the southwestern corner of the city. This area was recently annexed into the city of Stillwater from, as an interesting point, Stillwater Township. Next slide, please. As shown in figure 2 of your staff report, this map shows regional systems in relation to the amendment site. The amendment acknowledges that the regional trail search corridor for the Lake Elmo segment of the Central Greenway Regional Trail exists along the western edge of the annexation property, which is in orange. The amendment also states that trail segments will be constructed within road improvement corridors to accommodate the Central Greenway Regional Trail. Next slide. The proposed amendment site is 35.4 acres and was recently annexed into the city of Stillwater from Baytown. It says now Baytown Township. The property is located south of Trunk Highway 36, east of Manning Avenue North. It proposes to guide the 35.4 acres of newly annexed land as a highway mixed use. Add this area to the municipal urban service area and adjust forecasts upward to respond to a development proposal. And just to be clear, this was annexed into the city of Stillwater from Stillwater Township. Next slide, please. The proposed planned land use, as shown in figure 3 of your staff report, shows the amendment area being re-guided to highway mixed use. The land use category allows for a mix of residential, 30%, and commercial at 70% uses. The proposed development includes construction of a grocery store, convenience store, retail buildings, and apartment complex with about 200 units. The city's 2040 plan did not previously plan to accommodate future growth in this land use category. Next slide, please. As part of the amendment, the city proposed a forecast revision to reflect the expected development, and council staff agree with that determination. The proposed revisions include adding 200 households, 440 people, and 200 jobs to each of the 2030 and 2040 forecasts. These revisions are in bold and underlined in the table in front of you and in your staff report. With the proposed forecast revision, the 2021-2030 affordable housing need allocation is also adjusted from 227 to 303 affordable units. With the revised forecasts between 2020 and 2040, the city will grow by 2,640 people, representing 1,400 households. There will be an increase of 1,200 jobs in the city in the same time frame. Next slide, please. Table 2 from the staff report shown here illustrates the planned residential density in the city. Suburban communities are expected to plan for overall minimum densities of 5 to 7 units per acre, their authorized plan and this continues that. With the amendment area, which is included in the table as bold and underlined, the city's net residential density is 6.6 to 15 units per acre, as I stated, is consistent with council policy for suburban communities. Next slide, please. This slide shows the land guided for affordable housing in the city of Stillwater and is figure 4 from the staff report. While the proposed amendment increases the city's inventory of land guided for residential uses, the proposed population and household forecasts change also increases the city's share of affordable housing need by 76 units. That's the 227 units to 303 units as described on the previous slide. As shown here, with the proposed amendment, the city has guided enough land at minimum densities to provide opportunities for 345 units. The proposed amendment results in a deficiency of 14 units for the potential use of affordable housing. To address its share of the region's need for affordable housing between the time period from 2021 to 2030, the city needs to increase the minimum units possible by 14 units. This can be accomplished by guiding enough residential acres with sufficient and minimum densities. City staff have indicated that they are considering a future amendment to meet the city's need for affordable housing. With the current deficiency, the proposed amendment is inconsistent with the council's 2040 housing policy plan, and the city is therefore ineligible to participate in Livable Communities Act programs in which they are currently enrolled. And we have spoken with the city about that, and they certainly intend to become consistent in time, and they are not concerned about needing any livable communities dollars between now and when they get that taken care of for us. Next slide, please. So the findings, staff find that the proposed amendment conforms to regional system plans, is consistent with council policies, and is compatible with the plans of adjacent and affected jurisdictions. The next slide shows the proposed action, which is that the Metropolitan Council authorize the City of Stillwater to place its comprehensive plan amendment into effect, revise the city's forecast for households and population upward as shown in Table 1 in the review record, revise the affordable housing need allocation for the city to 303 units, finds that the amendment renders the city's comprehensive plan inconsistent with the council's housing policy, and that the city is ineligible to participate in Livable Communities Act programs at this time. The council will also advise the city that to be consistent with housing policy, the city needs to increase the inventory of land guided to support the development of low and moderate income housing for the 2021 to 2030 decade by at least 14 units by guiding enough residential acres with sufficient minimum densities, and to implement additional advisory comments in the review record for regional parks and housing that are in your staff report. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Riley, for the report. Questions on that report? Any questions? Hearing none.
Mr. Chair, yep. Could I make a comment?
Yeah, please, Councilmember Bento.
I just want to make a comment. I want to note that the new bridge over the St. Croix from Wisconsin to Minnesota has posed transportation challenges along 36 for the cities, including Stillwater and, excuse me, my dog is adding to the conversation again, Stillwater and Oakdale and North St. Paul, all the way in. I would imagine also for Roseville for Councilmember Lindstrom. And so there's a great amount of pressure on their city and county officials in the communities as well as in Washington and Ramsey County to try and address that. And the passage of the bonding bill was critical to securing some funding to address the highway safety and traffic pattern issues. So I just wanted to note that. It's not something we deal with directly, but it certainly has an impact on our work.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any further questions or discussion on the report? Councilmember Bento, did you want to move approval of this item?
Sure, I'll move approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second by Lindstrom.
Thank you, Sarah. Any discussion on the motion? Discussion. Hearing none, Michelle, please call the roll.
Yes, Chair Lilligren. Chambliss?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Lilligren?
Aye.
Lindstrom?
Aye.
Bento?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Thank you. Perfect timing.
Councilmember Bento's dog voted as well. Thank you. That motion is adopted. Thank you. We'll move on to our final action item for this evening. That's item 2020-304. It's the 2020 budget amendment, the November capital budget amendment. And Heather Augustin-Hebner is here to present. Welcome, Heather.
Good afternoon, Chair. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, we are. Thanks.
Okay, so this will be the last capital budget amendment that you will see from me this year. And we are bringing in funds from the long-awaited bonding bill that just passed fairly recently in the special session. So for those, I'm going to talk about it at a high level for those of you that like to follow along in detail. You're going to see two attachments on the budget item or the budget amendment. One of them kind of shows how amounts are changing at the program level, and the other lists specific projects. So this amendment will authorize the $5 million in state bonding awarded to the council in the session that just passed, and just over a $3.3 million match in council bonds, and that is required for that bonding program. Funds will be made available to the 10 parks implementing agencies based upon an established regional allocation formula. The amendment also authorizes about $23.4 million in state bonds and just over $5 million in state general funds that has been awarded through direct appropriations. You may know those more familiar as earmarks. The council does not match for earmarks. So what we do is we bring in the exact dollar amount that the direct appropriation was for, and then we pass those through via grant agreements as we would any other funding source. So the parks implementing agencies had originally presented project and equity highlights of a proposed list of bonding projects, totaling $25 million with MPOSC back in September of 2019. So usually what the cycle looks like is that there's pretty optimistic views at the beginning of the session of what funding levels we're going to get, and the parks implementing agencies develop a project portfolio for that dollar amount. When situations happen like we're in now, where we only got between the council match and the state bonds, it's only $8.3 million. So right now, all the parks implementing agencies are in the phase of basically whittling down their project list. Not all of the agencies have selected their final projects right now, but they're really taking a look at prioritizing the projects, and they'll be letting us know as soon as they're ready which projects they want to move forward with. So what's going to happen here is we're bringing in the money now because we don't want the implementing agencies to essentially get bogged down in our administrative process timelines if they don't work out really well. So what we're going to do is we're bringing in, and this is kind of the standard practice of what we do for bonding dollars and legacy dollars. We'll bring the money into our authorized capital program. And the next step is going to be council staff are really going to be looking for conformity of the projects. So the original project list was reviewed by MPOSC. They did their equity highlights, talked with MPOSC about their project details. So that discussion of this project list has happened. They are going to narrow that down. That original project list will be narrowed down. Council staff will do kind of a final review list for conformity, just to make sure that what they originally proposed and what they're proposing now is the same, and that it conforms with the regional parks policy plan, and make sure it's eligible for bonding dollars and all those normal checks and balances that we do. And then those projects are also going to need to get reviewed by Minnesota Management and Budget for their review and approval also. And when those steps are done, we'll pass the money through grant agreements. You will also likely see these projects again for delegation of signature authority. So if they hit a certain dollar threshold, we need to come back to the council formally to make sure that we can execute those grant agreements. You will also see the projects again in a budget amendment in that administrative adjustment section. So what that really means is that agencies will be able to program those dollars as agencies are ready, but we'll bring those back to you for transparency so you see what projects are finally selected. And if there's scope issues or there's some sort of project that comes through that's non-conforming, then obviously the funding will not get passed through. That's not typical, but we do definitely do that review. So this budget amendment supports the Thrive outcome of stewardship through responsible planning and management of resources for the Community Development Division and Regional Parks. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Heather. Questions on that report? Any questions?
Mr. Chair, I don't have a question. I do have a comment. This is a really, really large amount of earmarks or direct appropriations to the parks agencies. It seems to have become the norm lately, where instead of things being distributed by formula, most of the money is going to individual agencies. For the agencies who got the earmark, it's great. But for the agencies who didn't get any earmarks, it means that they don't get very much money for their system. We don't really have any say over what the legislature wants to do, but in my opinion, it's unfortunate for the smaller agencies that maybe don't have as much pull to get that money. It is what it is, but it seems to be a trend more and more that we don't get the amount, even the modest amount that we ask for the agencies as a whole. And there's a lot of money that's going to specific projects. There are projects that are getting as much as the entire system is getting in the earmarks. And I would move approval if nobody else has a question.
Great, thanks. Thanks for the observation and for the motion. Is there a second?
Second by Chambliss.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any discussion on the motion or further questions for Ms. Augusten-Huebner? Seeing none, Michelle, please call the roll on the motion.
Yes, Chair Lilligren. Chambliss?
Aye.
Cummings?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Lilligren?
Aye.
Lindstrom?
Aye.
Vento?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Heather. That item is adopted, and we'll move on to our information items. The first is the Land Use Advisory Committee report, and that'll be provided by our representative on the Advisory Committee, Councilmember Wolf, and Ms. Dietrich. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we can go to the next slide, Greg. As you know, the LUAC meets every other month and has representation from every council district and every county in the region. Next slide, please. On May 21st, we had the pandemic in full swing, of course, and the civil unrest had not yet begun. We discussed the Metro Climate Stats project and started thinking about the impacts on travel from people staying home and whether those are long-term or short-term. And now it's looking longer and longer term all the time. And who knows when things are going to get back to normal. And the group was supportive of looking at a cost-benefit analysis on the various strategies. We got a presentation on regional park systems additions, similar to what community development had, with kind of similar comments from what we had as our community development committee. And then we revisited typology of change. Once again, this had been a presentation in previous meetings. And this time we looked at the resource library and did a survey of all the members to take comments on whether it was working well for them. In July, next slide, please. In July, we did an overview of Livable Communities programs because we wanted everybody to have a knowledge base for doing more of a deep dive on the programs in later meetings, and worked a lot on how we could use an equity lens and what that meant to our community members, what information they needed in presentations, and what sorts of follow-up they thought were appropriate to using an equity approach in the committee's work, and got a lot of feedback from the members for our staff and how they would do presentations in the future. Next slide, please. And then on September 17th, we took a deeper dive into transit-oriented development, and there's a lot of diversity in what transit-oriented development means across the region to the members. There was some discussion about how areas may need more outreach to developers, not just to cities, to broaden the reach. The cities apply, but if developers don't even know that it's an option, they may not look for that as a way to do redevelopment, particularly in the areas that had the civil unrest and a lot of damage. One of the things that people really noticed was that rental under apartments has not been working well when it's been tried throughout the region. That's been kind of the fad for the last decade or so, of having the first floor be some sort of retail and then apartments up above, and the retail just really struggles all across the region to get tenants. So the group suggested that perhaps we would not prioritize that in the scoring, since it's overrepresented now and just isn't functioning very well in a variety of situations across the region. And we talked about LHI, particularly about single family homes. That was something, and home ownership, that was something that the staff was interested in finding out more about. And there was a lot of difference across the region on how that's working in terms of redevelopment of dilapidated structures and stuff. In some parts of the region, the market does that really well. People buy up the houses, fix them up, and flip them. In some others, the cities are buying the houses and fixing them up and flipping them, but are finding that the cost is so high that they need to sell them at market rate in order to make the dollars work, but they're being snapped up really fast. In the Minneapolis and St. Paul, there's more interest in doing them to retain them for affordable housing. But one of the things that the members brought up was looking at manufactured housing as a sort of underutilized option for home ownership. And would it be possible for LHIA to work with manufactured homes to get people into that sort of a housing situation, because it is affordable. And they all agreed that we need more funding in LHIA, as always. We had a presentation on the housing action plans and also on the water supply. And we had so much discussion in the first two that I think maybe people got talked out because there wasn't a whole lot of discussion from the members about either of those. But the council has also seen those same presentations. And that's all I have. If anybody has any questions.
Questions? Thank you very much, Councilmember Wolf, for the report and for the work on this. Questions on that report? Any questions? Yeah, Councilmember Lindstrom.
I was just curious to know what Councilmember Wolf sees as the priorities for the months ahead.
Well, I had that discussion with staff, but I don't remember exactly what we talked about. We've got a work plan sort of tentatively figured out for our next meeting. I can get back to you on what we did pretty much figure out most of next year, but I'll have to email it to you because I don't know off the top of my head. I'm a head election judge, so my mind has been full of getting everything ready for tomorrow. And there's no room for anything else right now.
Your mind is in the right spot.
Yeah, no doubt. Thanks for that service too, Councilmember Wolf. As a former election judge myself. Yeah, cool. Any other questions on that report or comments?
Councilmember Chambliss.
Yeah, please, Councilmember.
Yeah, so it's good to have this background. I don't know what's going on with my video, but it's good to have this background and to understand what some of the challenges are. I'm glad that I heard that there's a need for different developers or more developers to understand that there are opportunities, and I think it helps the cities to have more choices and options if more developers come forward. So, whatever we can do to work with them, I think would be great. And so I agree with that, Wendy. And hearing about the issues with renting the apartments above the retail, which I know is a popular design these days, including with transit-oriented development. Maybe we need to do some marketing about those available units, especially if they're affordable. And as we're looking at different affordable units, I've been thinking, well, are we getting reports at how successful we've been in getting diversity in those units or low-income residents after the money has been awarded? Do we follow up with them? And it would be nice for the city council to hear, what are some of our successes and what are some of our challenges after the money has been awarded.
Mr. Chair?
Please.
I Perhaps I wasn't clear or spoke too quickly, but the issue is the commercial properties don't find tenants. The rental properties, the home or apartments fill up, and there's a huge demand for the apartments. There's not a demand for the commercial spaces underneath. I don't know if the dollars don't work right. Sometimes it's that you have to plan certain things into the construction ahead of time for commercial, like vents for restaurants. If you don't put in the vents ahead of time, then a restaurant can't go in there. A lot of times businesses want their own space. Like, to me, putting a CVS on the first floor of a senior housing project you'd think would be like they'd just be shoveling money. But CVS and Walgreens and places like that want their own freestanding building. They don't want to be on the first floor of something else. So they end up either vacant or they're a few nonprofits or whatever, but it hasn't materialized as having retail, restaurant, or that sort of thing on the first floor. You end up with vacant space or underutilized space. Insurance agencies, I mean, not really what it ends up, it probably would have been better on a lot of those to just have all apartments and do the mixed use by having things adjacent to each other rather than on top, because the commercial just is not getting utilized. And so the group was pretty strong on that our scoring should not prioritize having commercial on the first floor and residential above, because the commercial just doesn't, you're wasting the money on it.
Thanks. It would be good to have developers be aware of those challenges. It's good for us to be aware of those challenges. And I think if the projects come forward and it's more affordable units and less retail, that can be a positive thing, as long as in the larger scheme of things, we are getting the commercial that we want as well. So thanks for bringing that up.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. My question is for Wendy. So Wendy, have we been able to get developers to the table, to talk about what's going on in the marketplace and including the modular? In my day job, we talk about Rise Modular and some of the other developers that are in that space, and there are some projects that are emerging. Are they able to give us insights, or is this kind of an after the fact, once the development's up, we are finding these things out? And I guess I'm just trying to figure out, to your point, or the point that was made earlier, and maybe to the point that, the point that I was trying to make earlier, in that, with trying to get communities across the region to apply for these grants, but you'll see, why they didn't make it past the first set of scoring, because maybe the engagement wasn't there, or maybe there were, issues with, how the development was being put together. So I guess I'm just saying, how do we, not only with the cities, but with that development community, get more insights and have them get a better understanding to help inform us on how maybe the scoring should go to, if that makes sense?
Well, our housing staff has been reaching out to the CDAs, to developers and whatnot. And we're also inviting developers to come to LUAC and have like a panel discussion where they can, in fact, we want to spend the entire meeting just having the panel discussion, because if we get people to come and talk to us, we want to be able to pick their brains as much as we possibly can to try and get as much understanding of where those challenges are and how, and we do have some of our members are developers as well. So that helps if we can get everybody to a meeting, but it's been a challenge with all the COVID stuff. We're meeting virtually, of course, but people's lives are a little more chaotic than they normally would be.
And I'm sorry, just if you could bear with me, Mr. Chair, just one more question. So, Councilmember Wolf, when you get that together, could community development just listen in, or council members just listen? I just think it'd be fascinating, and I wouldn't engage, but I'd love to just hear it, or if it was recorded, that we could watch it back later. I think that'd be informative for me. And the only other thing I'm trying to understand is that it all gets pieced together is, especially with modular housing, or trying some of those newer techniques to improve the potential for affordability. I'm just wondering, are we still seeing issues with comp plans and zoning where certain types of housing are prohibited, because it's still kind of, well, this is how we've always done it mentality. And I don't mean to go down deep in the rabbit hole now, but these are things where if I could just listen in and learn, I think it might help me in some of the other roles that I'm playing on the council and just in my other life as well. More or less just trying to figure out how can we gain those insights as a body that is dealing with this too.
Sure. You could certainly listen in on our LUAC meeting. I think we've got it planned for March, which would be the third Thursday in March at 4 o'clock. We don't normally post the videos online of LUAC, but we could probably work something out also about being able to watch it later. Okay. And one of the other things that came up in talking about manufactured housing is our housing staff has been talking with the groups that lobby for protection for the tenants, but those people are usually focused on places that aren't functioning well, that the infrastructure is deteriorating or there's problems, and it's at danger of being changed into something else. We encouraged housing staff to talk to parks that are successful and doing well, and what partnership opportunities there are, not just the ones that are going to go away, but how can we help people get into the parks that are doing well.
Thank you, Councilmember. Further questions or discussion on the report?
Mr. Chair, may I offer one other item?
Oh, yeah, thank you. I was going to ask you, Lisa, Director Barajas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Councilmember Wolf, I would just add on too that we are also planning for a committee of the whole in December for the council to have a similar developers panel as part of our overall development trends in the region, and then of what's happened in the past, and then looking forward about what we maybe might expect in the market from a developer's perspective going forward.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'd seen you went on camera and I meant to recognize you, Lisa, so my apologies. Any further questions or discussion on the Land Use Advisory Committee report? Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move on to our second information item, payment standards for Metro HRA Rent Assistance Program. And Ms. Smith is here, and Joel Huding as well, I believe. Ms. Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me tonight. Just for the record, my name is Terry Smith, and I'm the director of the Council's Housing and Redevelopment Authority. I'm here today to present an information item on rent standards for use in the administration of the Housing Choice Voucher and other rent assistance program. The discussion today is meant to set us up for an action item on November 16th, where you will all be asked to make a decision on rent standards for 2021. I'm here with my colleague, Joel Huding, the research manager. So the plan for tonight is I will present a couple just background slides. Then Joel will share some information on what's happening in the rental market with rent prices and vacancy rates, and then we'll dig into some payment standard slides. So, these are really tough decisions and it can get pretty complicated pretty quickly. So hopefully we can provide the right level of information today to set you up for November 16th. Next slide, please. Just as background, and you may recall that payment standards are rent limits that are used in the administration of the Housing Choice Voucher and other rent assistance programs. So these are the amounts that voucher holders go out and shop for a housing unit with which to use their rent assistance. They're limited by the fair market rents that are set by HUD each year. Once HUD issues fair market rents, housing authorities across the country are charged with setting payment standards or rent limits between 90 and 110% of those fair market rents. And the goal always is to adopt payment standards that are high enough to allow choice in all neighborhoods in the region, but low enough to serve as many families as possible. You may recall that the council adopted small area fair market rents in December of 2019. And these are payment standards by zip code. So instead of adopting payment standards based on fair market rents that are issued for the entire region as a whole, these are payment standards adopted at the zip code level. And really small area fair market rents are meant to open up choice and open up additional neighborhoods for voucher holders to move to. And the idea is that over time, the high rent areas then balance out with the low rent areas in the region. But because we did not implement these until July 2020 due to COVID, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few slides, we have very limited data to work with at this point. Next slide, please, Greg. So council policy direction is applicable to today's discussion and conversation on payment standards. Thrive will statements say that the council will offer housing options that give people in all life stages viable choices for stable housing. The council will develop and provide tools, including competitive rent limits and higher cost communities, to enable voucher holders to choose a location that best meets their needs. Council also adopted a housing goal that says to become a region with a broader housing spectrum where all people can live and thrive. The next set of slides will be covered by my friend and colleague, Joel Hudding. Next slide, please.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Mr. Chair, council members. So I'm just going to give a little bit of contextual analysis of the rental market. And the first thing I'll mention is that the data that I'm presenting tonight are from a proprietary data source. So we have a lot of information on rental prices within the Twin Cities region. Now, the FMRs that Terry is talking about that are set by HUD, those are actually used by a 5-year rolling average of data collected by the Census Bureau. So when you see changes in FMRs or that ultimately lead to changes in payment standards, that's a lagged data sample. So, when you think about rent prices, we had pretty sharp increases in rent prices in 2015, 16, 17, and 18. And those are all sort of still in that sample. So we can expect to continue to see increases in these FMRs as we start rolling through these years. But I'm going to provide some information just to kind of give you a sense of what the housing market is doing today and where we might sort of expect it to go a little bit in the future. So bottom line is that rent prices have been pretty flat in 2020. And it's been followed along with a really sharp increase in the vacancy rate, which you can see on this plot. And so that's kind of a new trend that we're seeing kind of correlated with COVID time, is this pretty sharp increase in the vacancy rate. Don't have a really good explanation for what's going on yet, but that is something that we're observing. So right now we're seeing a vacancy rate of about 6.1%. Which is about the same as what we saw in the second quarter of 2010. So we've not seen a vacancy rate that high since we were kind of digging our way out of the last recession. And of course, if landlords have vacant properties, that provides a pretty strong incentive for them to start lowering prices to attract new tenants. And so probably part of the reason why these rent prices have been flat has to do with this increased vacancy rate that we're seeing. Next slide. And just kind of diving into that a little deeper, just starting by looking across class. So when I talk about Class A properties, I'm talking about luxury, new luxury units. Class B are going to be, still pretty high quality units. And Class C are pretty good units too. But that's kind of what we're talking about here. And the sharpest increase in the vacancy rate seems to be happening in the Class A, so these luxury apartment buildings. And you'll see that Class B, most of our tenants are probably going to be renting in Class B or Class C properties. And you can see that vacancy rates are continuing to, they're rising for Class B units as well. You can see kind of the sharpest increase was in Class A. And then Class C has been pretty flat. Next slide. And we're also seeing, maybe some slight differences by bedroom size. So we're seeing 1 bedroom and studio units, vacancy rates seem to have increased the most. And 3 bedroom units, it's kind of unclear at this point. You can see that it was really pretty flat up until this last quarter. There was a little bit of a spike in the vacancy rate for 3 bedroom units, but we don't quite know that that's an actual signal or anything yet. So we'll have to be following those trends into the future quarters. Next slide. And rent prices have been pretty flat across the board. The one thing I'll note is that you can kind of see that there's possibly a little bit of a trend happening in Class A units where rent prices may be starting to go down a little bit, which would make sense. And one of the things that we can expect is that when these vacancy rates go up, there's a little bit of a lag before that translates to a change in rent. Next slide. And one of the things, as I noted in the vacancy rates on 3 bedroom apartments, that really hasn't seemed to change much, maybe in this last quarter. And so along with that, we're just seeing these kind of continuing trends of increasing rent prices, but not increasing at a particularly fast rate for 3 bedroom units. And then 2 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms, and studios have been pretty flat throughout the year. Studios possibly declining a little bit. Next slide. And just for folks who really want to dive into the data some more, if you just go to the homepage of our research website, which the link is down there, you'll find a link to this Twin Cities Rent Trends app, which I've talked about in the past, but this is a way you can go in and click on any individual city and get some of these key statistics. You want to learn about the vacancy rate, how rent prices have been tracking over time for a particular city. And then we also include a little bit of information about things like sample sizes. So the number of apartment buildings that are in the data set, just to kind of give some additional contextual information. But this is a really good way to really kind of analyze what's going on across the region. And what the app is sort of configured to in this screenshot is showing you the percent change in rent over the previous year. And you might be able to see a little bit of a spatial pattern there, but one of the things that stands out to me quite a bit is that rent prices, and we have a really good sample size of apartment buildings in Minneapolis, so we have a really clear signal here. And rent prices do seem to be going down in Minneapolis. And you can see like the kind of lighter shade colors kind of surrounding Minneapolis, so the kind of the core, the urban core area, and along with some of the close-in suburbs. Edina looks like it's in there, where rent prices have been pretty flat or decreasing in some of these areas. But then in other areas of the region, really have just seen sort of the continuation of trends that had been going on for several years. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Terry.
Thank you, Joel. I appreciate it. Having our partners in research helping us analyze this data over the last several years has been tremendously helpful to us and really gives us a much more accurate picture of what's happening with vacancies in the market. Next slide, please. So just as a reminder, you may recall that tenants pay between 30 and 40% of their income towards rent. If a tenant finds a unit with gross rent within the payment standard, they pay 30% of their income. And gross rent is contract rent plus any tenant paid utilities. If a tenant finds a unit with a gross rent that's above the payment standard, the tenant pays 30% of their income plus the difference. Tenants cannot pay more than 40% of their income at initial move-in. So rent maximums are different for each family because the maximums are based on income. So the more income a family has, the higher rent limit they are going to have. Next slide, please. So here's an example just to kind of show you how the payment standards play out. This example is a 2-bedroom in Maplewood, zip code 55109, one of the 82 zip codes that we have in our service area. But this particular household is a parent with 2 children. They have employment income of $16,250 a year. 30% of their adjusted income is $382. The rent on this particular unit is $1,150, and then the tenant pays electricity. So they get a $57 credit for a total gross rent of $1,207. The 2-bedroom payment standard in this zip code happens to be $1,110. So as you can see, the gross rent for this unit is $97 above the payment standard. So this tenant will pay 30% of their income, which is the $382 plus the additional $97 that's over the payment standard. Next slide, please. One of the things, well, I should have said on the previous slide, one of the things we look at when we're analyzing rent data is the percentage of tenants that are paying more than 30% of their income towards rent, as in the previous slide example. So in this slide, just trying to illustrate that the federal government provides the housing authority with budget authority and says, now here's your money for the year, go out and serve as many families as possible within the budget authority. We're anticipating getting a total this year in 2020 of about $65 million in rent subsidy dollars. And the council has a total of 6,812 vouchers. So how the rule is take your 65 million and go out and serve as many families as possible. Adopting higher rent limits results in higher average subsidy per family, fewer vouchers issued, and then higher success rates. If we adopt lower rent limits, that results in lower average family. We can issue more vouchers, so serve more families, but then success rates may be lower if the rent limits are not high enough. Such that families can be successful in finding a unit within the payment standards. Next slide, please. So digging a little deeper on the small area fair market rents, the council approved small area fair market rents in December of 2019. And again, these are adopting rent limits at the zip code level instead of using one market rent for the entire metropolitan area. It allows us to dig a little bit deeper. It allows access to additional neighborhoods for families. So higher rent limits for the higher rent areas and lower rent limits for lower rent areas in the region. And the idea is that those two balance each other out over time as the small area fair market rents are implemented. So the implementation of this was delayed. We just implemented these in July of 2020. So the council adopted small area fair market rents in December of 2019. We needed to then get formal approval from HUD after council approval. We got that on January 23rd. And then we spent February developing an online tool for tenants and staff to use to determine what the payment standard is for different zip codes. And then we had some resident engagement meetings planned for March when we were going to go through the tool with families to get feedback on, the ease of use of the tool. We were going to explain how small area fair market rents work and then get input on the communications that we had planned for implementation. And then COVID hit, of course, in March. So we had to redirect our efforts on pandemic planning. And we eventually did have online resident meetings to talk about the tool and the communications for implementation, but ultimately we didn't implement until July of 2020. So that's only a few months worth of data. But the implementation of small area fair market rents really takes a year period or longer to implement because families that are living in increased small area fair market rent areas receive the benefit at their next annual recertification after implementation. And, you know, a certain percentage of families are recertified each year. So we can say 1/12 of the families are recertified each month. I mean, I think I said each year, each month. And so when families are recertified, they receive the increased amount. For families that are living in decreased small area fair market rent areas, they're held harmless until they move. So as long as they remain living in their current unit, they get the advantage of the higher payment standard until such time that they move. And of course, we don't control when they move. So it's hard to know when we will see the full effect of people that are living in decreased small area fair market rent areas. So because of these two things, the full impact of small area fair market rents will not be known for at least a year, probably a little bit more. We have, I have a typo on this slide. We actually have 82 zip codes in the Metro HRA's service area, and the market rents changed greatly, and the market rent changes very greatly throughout the region. In some areas there were decreases, in some areas there were increases. But if you think about 82 zip codes, and each zip code has different market rent, fair market rent for 0 bedroom, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, all the way up to 6 bedrooms. So it gets quite complicated, and the spreadsheets for analyzing this are quite giant. But now the council had issued new small area fair market rents for 2021, and the council is now charged with adopting payment standards within 90 and 110% of these new market rents. Next slide. So this, here's a chart that shows the average per family cost. And the takeaway on this slide is really that historically, average cost per family has grown about 2% per year. But the average cost per family has grown by 5% since 2016. So that's a pretty sharp increase in fair market rents that impacts the overall budget and the number of families that can be served. As a reminder, federal funding is not keeping pace with the level of growth. So as you may recall, future year funding is based on current year spending. So what we spend in 2020, we will get in 2021, plus a little bit of inflation. But with sharp increases in our average subsidy, the budget that we receive is not enough to serve all families. But a good part of this story, if there's an upside to this, as you heard from Joel, rents are starting to stabilize. So rents for many bedroom sizes are flat, and vacancy rates are increasing. And when vacancy rates increase, generally speaking, rents start to go down. So that's a good part of this story, that we expect to see that average HAP start to level off. Next slide, please. So here's another way to look at this. This slide shows how this plays out with Metro HRA's budget authority. So as I indicated, we anticipate we're going to get $65 million this year to cover subsidy for family. And as I indicated, the Metro HRA has 6,812 vouchers. So on this slide at the right, if say our average per family subsidy is $775, that allows us to serve 6,900 families. Essentially, we could serve all families if our average subsidy was $775. Increase our average subsidy to $800 per family, we can serve 6,700 families. And increase that average per family subsidy to $825, we can only serve 6,500 families. So the bottom line is, for every $25 increase, an average subsidy equates to service to 200 fewer families. So you get the picture of how that works. Next slide, please. So this is a busy slide with lots of words, but these are the things that we look at when we're the review process we go through to determine if we should increase or decrease payment standards each year. We generally look at three things. We look at average rents, we look at vacancy rates, and we look at tenant rent burden. The goal is for voucher holders to be successful in placing their voucher in the neighborhood of their choice. So we review average rent data by community and by bedroom size to determine if we think voucher holders can be successful at the current rates. The review that Joel talked about shows that rents are flat and that current payment standards generally fall within average rents. So we took the data that Joel's research team developed, and we have some average rent tools that we purchased from Housing Link that shows what average rents are for each bedroom size in each community that we serve. And so we look at those in comparison with our current payment standards, and can voucher holders be successful within the current payment standards. The second thing we look at is vacancy rates. Generally speaking, when vacancy rates are low, rents go up. When vacancy rates are higher, rents tend to lower. And so we're looking forward to the day when rents may decrease a bit. But as Joel indicated, vacancy rates are climbing higher than they've been in 10 years. And that's a good thing for voucher holders because when vacancy rates again are higher, there, number one, are more units for voucher holders to choose from, but rents start to stabilize. So as Joel indicated, the vacancy rate is currently at 6.1%. A 5 to 6% vacancy rate is considered healthy. So we're at a healthy vacancy rate. If it continues to go up, that's considered unhealthy. But it's a good thing for voucher holders. It might not be a good thing for landlords, but voucher holders then again have more units to pick from. The third thing that we look at when we're analyzing where payment standards are is tenant rent burden. And when we talk about rent burden, we mean the percentage of families that are paying more than 30% of their income towards rent. So today, the data that we have shows that 51% of households are paying 30% of their income towards rent. That means 49% are what's considered rent burden, so are paying more than 30% of their income towards rent. We did some analysis to determine after full implementation of the small area fair market rents, 62% of our families will be paying 30% of their income towards rent. So that increases by 11%, which is a good thing. HUD has a rule of thumb that they use and that we also use when analyzing payment standards, but our goal is to have 60% or more of families paying 30% of their income towards rent. Families that are rent burdened, the majority that are paying more than 30% of their income are between 30 and 40% of their income towards rent. So the moral, I guess, of this story is that once we fully implement the small area fair market rents that are in place today, we'll be within the goal of 60% of families paying 30% of their income. Next slide, please. So I have a few options that I'm going to show today. I'm going to show two different options for your consideration to illustrate how this plays out from, service to number of families and the budget. So the current payment standards are, for the most part, within 90 to 110% of the new small area fair market rents. So again, when HUD comes out with new fair market rents, we need to analyze those, make sure that our standards are within 90 and 110%. We currently have 12 zip codes out of the 82 total zip codes in our service area that do not fall within 90 and 110%. And most of them are, $5 off or so, and would need very minor adjustments to become within 90 and 110%. Of those 12 zip codes, we have 30 families out of 7,000 living in those 12 zip codes. And they would be minimally impacted by either a reduction or an increase in payment standards. So to give you an idea of what's really happening, out of those 30 households impacted, 17 of them live in one building in Edina in efficiency apartments, and they would see a $5 increase in their payment standard. Some of those 12 zip codes are in very rural areas where we have nobody living. So the moral of the story is very minimal impact to the people that are living in the 12 changed areas. So if we were to agree not to change payment standards with the exception of these minimal tweaks for the 12 zip codes, it would allow us to fully determine the impact of moving to zip code based rent limits. It would allow for a full year of implementation before making changes. Again, we wouldn't be making any substantial changes to the rent standards or the payment standards. And really, this would be my recommended option at this time. Next slide, please. To show you a flavor of what we could do and how we could make changes if we wanted to make changes. One option would be to adopt new rent standards at 150 or at 100% of the currently newly issued small area fair market rents. So as I indicated, the new rents, market rents that were issued by HUD, some areas went up, some areas went down. This option would make payment standard adjustments in all 82 zip code areas to bring them to exactly 100% of the FMR. Right now, some of them are at 95%, some are at 109%. This option would re-level all, here's a typo again, we don't have 85 zip codes, we have 82. So this would re-level all 82 zip codes. It would require notification of all families that are living in changed payment standard areas, which would be most of them. And it would really wouldn't allow us to see the full picture of initial small area fair market rent implementation. I think the big kicker of this option is it would cost about $3.7 million to implement. And in my opinion, raises payment standards above a level of need that allows voucher holders to be successful. Again, if we were to implement this option or really any changed option, it takes about 12 months or more to implement. Families that are living in increased payment standard areas would see the benefit at their next recertification. Families that are living in decreased areas would be held harmless until they move. But this would be spending $3.7 million additional would be a reduction in service to almost 375 families. So wouldn't be that 375 families would lose their voucher. That number would be reduced through regular monthly attrition. So I wanted to show that example so you could see how the budget can get impacted real fast when we start increasing standards. Next slide, please. So really, I want to start answering questions. I want to, answer any questions you have some discussion on whether we should be making changes to the payment standards. But based on what I know is happening in the market with rents tapering off and flattening out, vacancy rates increasing, those are in our favor. And, if after some discussion, I'm happy to answer any questions you have and have some discussion on these options.
Thank you, Ms. Smith and Mr. Hudding, for your work on this, for presenting this. And Terry, you always do such a good job because I know this is very, very complicated, and you make it easy to understand. So that is much appreciated as well. And I'm just going to ask, Councilmember Vento, are you on the meeting right now?
I am.
Could I please ask, something has come up. It's a good thing, but it demands my attention. Right away.
Sure.
I'm wondering if I could please pass the chair to you to facilitate through this discussion and questions.
Sure. I'd be happy to.
All right.
So,
all right. Thank you.
Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question and then a comment. I guess my question is, I think you touched on it a little bit, Terry, but what do you think the impact will be with all of the research and all of the data that's just starting to come in as far as inventory goes? Do you think that we will see additional landlords who are willing to accept vouchers?
Madam Chair and Councilmember Cummings, absolutely. 10 years ago, before the vacancy rate took a tank in 2010, landlords needed us, so they were more willing to accept voucher holders. So they are more willing to accept voucher holders. Some of them loosen their screening criterias. So having more units available is a tremendous benefit to the voucher holders for those reasons.
And then Madam Chair, can I make a comment?
Yes, Councilmember.
It seems to me you've done so much research and study. This information is just amazingly helpful. It seems to me that to go away from option one and make changes at this point would be really premature, since we've not had an opportunity to analyze the data at all. And knowing full well that in the best of circumstances, it would have taken a minimum of 12 months to analyze what the effect is. And now with fruit basket upset and who knows what we have going on, it may even take longer than that. But so much research went into it, so much conversation, so much discussion, that to me, it seems prudent to stick with the plan and see what data comes in and then make an analysis. But to just switch horses at this point, to me, seems very premature. This is really a great presentation. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember Cummings. Go ahead, Ms. Smith.
Well, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, Councilmember Cummings, I agree with you 100%, and I would never recommend that we leave standards alone if I didn't think families could be successful. That's the bottom line. Can families be successful placing their vouchers in a neighborhood of their choice with the current standards? And I think the answer to that is yes. So thank you for your comments.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to echo what Councilmember Cummings said. That's exactly what I was thinking. And I can't imagine either. And maybe I'm just trying to think about all the families, right, where this is their lifeline, and to have more change and uncertainty coming at them, and then we're serving less families even more so. And so anyways, I just really, I have great faith in you, Terry. I think you're doing such a good job in such hard times. And, you keep our goals and the focus on those families. So anyway, I just really want to echo exactly what Councilmember Cummings said. And I guess just, hats off to you. Always trying to keep those families in mind, because everything is just so uncertain for them right now. And, I just want to try to keep them as stable and successful as possible.
Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with everything that's been said so far. We're just at the beginning of the changes to the rental market. It's going to be more changes coming, and to spend all of that money when there's not a need for major change, when we can use that for vouchers instead. I mean, obviously, to me, option number one is the right way to go. That's all.
Anyone else want to speak up, add to the conversation? I sense that there may be some uniform. Oh, Councilmember Chambliss.
Yes, and what you were going to say, yeah, I think there's some uniform thought here. Glad to see that what's happening with the vacancy rates could potentially keep the rates stable instead of going up. I mean, the prices of the units going up. So that's a good thing. And I'm in support of option one as well.
Anyone else? Well, Terry, this is terrific. I want to echo what Councilmember Cummings said. There's always so much clarity, especially with some pretty complicated issues in your presentations. And I always feel like I've earned a few credits at the college level, probably the postgraduate level. So thank you very, very much. This was a great presentation. With that, Lisa Barajas, do you have anything you want to report on or add?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just add that as we are closing out the calendar year, which feels odd to say since I haven't seen you all in person for quite some time, that we are starting to do our work planning for 2021. And we are looking very closely at the strategies that you have in your Met Council strategic plans. So we'll be looking at those and how those work and how it fits into our committee's plans as well. So if there are other items that the committee is interested in, I ask you to percolate on those items, and we'll be bringing that discussion to you in either late December or in January to talk about our committee work plan for 2021. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Wolf, good luck tomorrow with your work, and thank you. I want to join the others in thanking you. And if anybody here hasn't voted yet, you know what tomorrow is. So thank you all very much and have a good evening. We are adjourned.